This simple system converts your car into a luxury double bed camper. It gives you more useful space in your boot day to day, and is actually really easy to build using 2 sheets of plywood and basic tools. In fact, I set out to make this much simpler than many of the other builds I've seen on YouTube. There are no side flaps with hinges, and there are no pull-out drawers, and I've come up with a new way to connect the extension piece to the box that's much simpler as well. The result is this convertible sleeping platform that deploys in seconds, leaves your rear seats free for use during the day, and converts to a 2-meter long, perfectly flat sleeping platform in the nighttime. And when it's folded away, you still have this really useful structured storage space in the boot, which is actually really handy for picnics and weekend trips. This whole system is really easy to tune to different size cars as well. It's kind of surprising, I think, actually how many cars have this full length space once you move your front seats right forward. There are no changes that are permanent to the car. The whole thing can come out in about 10 minutes. It's just tied down using the anchor points in the boot here. The idea with this project is I'm building this overlander camper for our family camping trip, so make sure you subscribe to see more on this project.
So here's the thing, I've got no woodworking skills to speak of. The one new thing that I had to figure out for this was how to use a pocket hole jig, so that's the way these panels are all connected together. Obviously with plywood you don't want to screw straight down there because the screw's then going to go into the ply and break it apart. It's not a very strong way of connecting this. So the way to do it is using a pocket hole system where you drill these angled holes up through the side pieces, and then you can screw up into the plywood across the plies so it's much stronger. So the basic concept is just to first of all build this box. So this is just a simple box. It's got a bottom and a top, both the same size, and this is just kind of designed to fill as much of the boot space as possible. And then we've got the 2 side pieces and the central support. So the central support is exactly the same shape as the side pieces, with just the thickness of a sheet of ply taken off the back of that. So the back panel of this box, which is actually at the front of the car, can sit between the 2 side pieces. So then there's the extension, which I've got slid out in front behind me, which converts this into the full 2-meter long bed. That's a thicker piece of ply. This is 12mm ply, that's 18mm ply, because that's obviously floating on a support, so it needs to be a little bit stronger, whereas this is supported with the central piece. So we can get away with thinner plywood for that, which saves a bit of weight.
So the first thing you need to do is obviously measure the space you've got to decide on the dimensions of this box. Now, when I first did this, I just sort of ploughed into it and I built the box completely square. So the sides were basically rectangular, the top was then parallel with the base of the car, which was actually a massive mistake because I've got the rooftop tent. The level of this car needs to be based on that level of the rooftop tent. So I reused the top and the bottom, but I had to do the sides and the central piece again, and made them slightly taller near the back of the car so that the platform is the right level. Once you're happy with the dimensions, you then obviously need to translate that onto your sheet of plywood and then make all the cuts using a circular saw. So for the 3 uprights, it's actually quite simple. 2 of those can be cut edge to edge because obviously the angle is going to be a mirror of the other one. So you can kind of just cut your horizontals and then 1 diagonal between them, and you've got 2, and then you do another one for the central piece. And then it's a question of building that together. So that's where I used this pocket hole jig system. It's a cheap thing from Amazon. I'll link to it in the description below. Now I messed this up a little bit because I'm using 12mm ply. It's a little bit optimistic to try and use pocket holes, I think, on 12mm ply. It says the minimum thickness is 12.7, which is kind of really annoying because the plywood is thinner than that. So I missed a few times and the screws kind of showed through. It doesn't really matter, there's still plenty more holding the whole thing together. Like I said, there's a lot of tolerance in this kind of project for things to go a little bit squiffy. It doesn't really matter. The goal is just to get this platform super solid and the right kind of shape and size. I think you're supposed to glue and screw when you use pocket holes. I didn't do that, and I'm really glad that I didn't because I needed to rebuild this after the first attempt. So I had a feeling that I might end up doing something like that, and I like the flexibility to be able to just make changes to these kinds of things as well. So the size of this extension piece is completely dependent on the size you've got in your boot. Obviously, if your boot is less than 1 meter, this piece then isn't going to be big enough to create that 2-meter bed without having a join of its own. So if you end up having to do that and you're making this piece out of 2 sections, the support mechanism for this is going to be slightly different. Probably more going to be like an H-shape piece underneath or something like that for the structure to work if there's a hinge here. So my box isn't actually quite 1 meter long, but the space with the seats up at this higher level is enough for this to be then slightly larger than the box itself, which gives me the combined length of the 2 meters. And all I do is just slide this back, and it actually just sits underneath the plastic shape here, and slides on top of that. And the brilliant thing about this whole system is the way that I've got this connection here. So this is completely floating, so it needs to kind of connect to this and be load bearing at the point where the box is, which is obviously really strong. So I just thought actually just the really simplest approach here is just 2 bits of wood under here on the back of this box with a bit of dowel drilled and glued into the top of those, and then just 2 holes drilled through here at the right place, and it will just sit on top of those dowels and it all locks in and it's completely flush. It just means there's no movement and no chance of it wanting to slide forward, and of course the weight is supported at the back, so the structure that you put underneath here to keep this up can kind of have a bit more tolerance. It sort of will lock itself into place quite nicely. So this is the T-piece, which literally just folds up and is stored flat against that section there. You can see this was one of my first attempts at the side or the central part with all the pocket hole drilled in there, so I just reused that. Getting the shape of this piece is quite hard. You can see it actually, to get the level, it's not actually flush with that, so there's a sort of specific shape that this bit will need to be. Obviously a lot of cars are going to have a different arrangement here with seats that will kind of lean up, so this piece is going to be much smaller, and the idea is when we're converting to the sleeping platform, you just bring all of the stuff that you're carting around on the top in the day, just chuck it into these spaces here and down here, slide the platform out, and then you've got your sleeping area completely clear of your cargo. So again, in terms of the bedding, I wanted to make sure we had a really simple solution here. A lot of people I've seen go the whole hog and get foam cut to the right shape and upholstered and all the rest of it. And I think that's a bit excessive, and you end up with a lot of foam sort of taking up space. So I wanted to just reuse these old self-inflating mattresses that we had for camping for the kids before. And my mum actually sewed a sheet into like a giant pillowcase for the self-inflating mattress. So we've got a really nice self-contained system where there's a comfortable cotton sheet over the self-inflating mattress, which stops them being rustly, and the whole thing can just roll up with the duvet inside it into a little bundle and roll out simply and quickly and ready to use. Obviously I haven't got any bedding on this at the moment, but in this car, even with this bed being about 30 centimeters, it's more like 33 at the back, and then it tapers off obviously towards the front here. I've still got quite a lot of headroom up to the top here. I can move around. Obviously it's pretty small quarters, but for 2 kids primarily using this, it's brilliant. They love it. We've done a couple of test camps in it. It's actually really comfortable. You can just lie here. Obviously you can see the stars through this sunroof here, but not these two because we've got the roof tent over those now. But yeah, it's lovely. The cool thing is once it's level, it actually feels just like a really comfortable place to sleep, and you're inside the car, so when the doors are shut and the windows are up, you feel really snug and warm and dry. So it's really cool, really cool. So the hardest bit about this is getting in and out, and I actually think it's much easier just to get out this way. We have our heads at this end, so that's how you get in, and the way to get out is kind of the reverse. So it's just roll your feet forward, and you can put your feet down there, and then you kind of just step out. What's really remarkable is how stable this top piece is, just on that little T-section with the dowel holding it all into place at the end. I think that mechanism is really key. If you're interested in these DIY projects, I'd love it if you were to become a member of this channel. I'm going to do some exclusive behind the scenes content that's just for members as well. It's much appreciated if you join that. Obviously there's only really space for 2 in the back of a car on a sleeping platform like this, but it's actually dead easy to sleep 2 more people on your car using a rooftop tent, and I'm really happy to recommend this one from Young Hunter that I've got on the car here now. So watch this video next to learn all about that, and I'll see you there.